Okay, can you hear me? Perfect. George Washington said in Hamilton the musical, "We have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story." It is because of this quote that I affirm today's resolution. After death, there must be some form of life or consciousness. Definitions defined by dictionary.com. Death, the ceasing of all vital functions. Must be, expressing an opinion in something that is logically very likely. Some form, does not have to be the entirety, just has to be a form of. Life, a corresponding state, existence, or principle of existence conceived as belonging to the soul. Consciousness, awareness of something for what it is, internal knowledge. Burdens. The affirmative's burden is to prove that with the evidence, there must be some form of consciousness or life that exists. Contention 1, consciousness exists after death. In a study done of 2,060 patients from Austria, US, and UK, interviewed for the study who were legally pronounced dead for a time between 3 to 10 minutes, almost 80% said they recall some form of awareness after being pronounced clinically dead. Dr. Parniak continued, "This suggests more people may have mental activity after they have passed. Over 50% of them were able to claim specific events that happened after they passed, that only people that were in the room would have had known. In this case, consciousness and awareness appeared to occur during a 3 to 10 minute period where there was no heartbeat or vital organs functioning." Contention 2, internal knowledge carries on. Our consciousness exists through what we leave behind for other people. Consciousness is carried on through internal thoughts to others, writings, songs, and movies that express consciousness of our individuals. Alexander Hamilton is a perfect example of this. He was one that wrote and wrote and wrote towards revolution and independence, and his writing and his internal thinkings are still used today. This can be said for many other public and personal people. Contention 3, paranormal activity. The basis of this contention comes from a quote from Albert Einstein, that energy cannot be created or destroyed in the theory of the conservation of energy. This shows that energy, which the human body uses to function, an article from the Daily Mail says in a lifetime, the human body produces enough energy to run an iPhone 7 for 15 years. This energy must go somewhere. The one theory of paranormal activity exists through this energy living on. One of the most famous paranormal investigators, Jason Hawes and Grant Wilson, using digital thermometers, EMF meters, thermographic and night vision cameras, handheld and static digital cameras, digital audio recorders, and laptop computers, have confirmed and caught on tape over 5,000 experiences of paranormal activity of people after they have passed. These have not been able to be officially debunked by anyone. With that, I pass the mic.
Hey, first off, thank you, Andrew, for accepting the debate and being flexible with the scheduling. I'm glad to see that you are not in the path of the hurricane and that you and your family are safe and sound and you're able to do this debate. Next, I'd like to thank QallOut for hosting the tournament. And let me get in my case. So the question is at hand is, after death, there must be some form of consciousness, life or consciousness. First, definitions: death, the complete cessation of all physical processes. For the purpose of the debate, I am defining the word not in the legal sense, the ending of breathing or heartbeat, but rather in the metaphysical sense. That is, death as in the complete cessation of all naturalistic processes in the body. Must, for the purpose of this debate, I'm actually ignoring this word. I feel like this word puts me at an unfair advantage and makes for a somewhat poorly worded question. I ask the audience and judges only to consider the preponderance of evidence on both sides. Life, the existence or quality of the state of being alive. Consciousness, the state of quality of awareness or of being aware of an external object, and the ability to act with agency. Looking at the author's intent, it is my belief that these last two words are to be used somewhat interchangeably and are meant to speak to the same idea. That is, some part of oneself continues to exist after death. Next, my positive case. Contention 1, the death of an individual. Although far from subtle science, the most plausible explanation for the seat of one's consciousness is the physical interaction of the cells within the brain. Thus, consciousness is closely and intimately related to physical matter. We can see examples of this interaction in an NFL football player who spends his career repeatedly receiving blows to the head. It is a widely accepted fact that damage to one's brain, and specifically damage to one's prefrontal cortex, leads to changes in the way a person acts, and it can be in an extreme way. A once patient, loving, and kind person at the beginning of a football career can become violent and rely on abused chemicals. It is widely accepted that this is caused by damage to this area of the brain or damage to the physical processes of the brain. Thus, we can deduce that in the absence of these underlying physical reactions, also known as death, consciousness can also cease. And I'm going to save contention 2 because I only had 20 seconds left and pass the mic.
Okay, so let's get into this really quickly. I'm going to get into the definition debates first. I hate to make it a definition debate, but there's some things I think we need to address. One, he says death is a cessation of all physical processes. I'm okay with that, but that is the internal organs. Like that is that. Once the internal organs stop, he can't say brainwaves and consciousness ceasing to exist would be also death, because that gives away all affirmative ground that saying consciousness has to stop for death to happen. There's no after that can happen at that point. So that definition completely burdens the affirmative. We're going to look to the dictionary definitions that I proposed as the vital definitions for the ground. Must. He says we're going to ignore that word. We can't ignore that word. It's in the resolution. Therefore, it must be addressed by judges and by audience because it's in the resolution. Second, he goes into life and consciousness. Again, I'm going to say on his consciousness definition, 1, you're going to prefer the dictionary definition. 2, you're going to say that it says being aware of a physical instant. So again, he's linking those two as one thing. And that's the whole point of the debate. He's trying to win the debate in a truism through the definitions. Look to the dictionary definitions and look to the fact that consciousness exists is not what we're talking about with the physical body. You're going to see that it's the awareness of what it is, and it is the internal knowledge. Then he says that these are interchangeably. I'm going to disagree with that because of the word or in the resolution. It says life or consciousness. That is a separation of two separate things, not an intertwine of one. 2, then he's going to go on to this whole individual aspect. And I really don't see the link on this. That's the issue I have. He says that because the damage on the brain can happen, then that hurts the consciousness. 1, what's to say that a damaged consciousness can't still exist? So even if it is the damage, even if there's something wrong with it because it hits or blows, it can still exist in an after situation. There's no link to the fact that this is what is the consciousness. Yes, a consciousness can exist within a physical situation. It can be damaged and altered, but what's to say that that damaged and altered consciousness cannot exist afterwards? We look to dementia patients. We look to different things. Just because they are damaged, it still does exist. He didn't attack any of my specific contentions, so they're going to stay on the flow, and I'm going to pass the mic back to him.
Right. And I, too, hate to get into a definitional battle here. I'm looking at Merriam-Webster's definition of death, a permanent cessation of all vital functions, the end of life. And that's specifically what I'm referring to. So the end of brain cells, for example, living, metabolizing. I'm not really, I don't want to get into brain waves or energy in the definition for the reasons that you pointed out. So I think we're pretty close on the definition of that word. So the cessation of all vital functions, the ending of the physical processes of the cell. And I'm looking to that definition because like a paramedic or a doctor has a different definition of the word, right? But that's more tied to legal reasons or medical ethical reasons. When do we not resuscitate a person? So on and so forth. All right, so I'm going to finish up with contention 2 before I start to head into my rebuttals. So contention 2, the death of the universe. As per the first and second law of thermodynamics, the closed system of the universe is heading towards a state of entropy in which the universe can no longer sustain processes that will increase entropy. All stars will cease to produce heat. All planets will become cold and barren places as their surfaces hover close to absolute zero. In such an existence, life as we effectively know it would be an impossibility. It is right and justified to believe that the physical evidence we have at our disposal lends credence to the idea that we and everything like us will meet an inevitable, cold, and predictable end. So I'm all right. So those are my 2 contentions. I'm going to pass it back to you before I get into my rebuttals.
I'm more than happy to hear your rebuttal, so I have more argumentation to go on. But go ahead, and since I've already attacked the first contention, attacking the second contention, he says life as we effectively know it. Hence the word effectively know it. That's just say that doesn't mean just because that exists in this substance that we're not looking at a conscience or a different existence that can still exist. Look to my paranormal activity of the energy that continues to live on. Look to the energy, the contention 2 of how different things can still live on. Look to Alexander Hamilton. Life didn't exist like it did then, how it does now, but we still use those things things and those writings. So if a new life exists, that can still happen. And look to my contention, very one about the consciousness existing, and look to that specific study. That study is going to be key in this debate. That study says our consciousnesses exist afterwards, and we can see what's happening and what's going on. So even if it doesn't exist how we know it, it still exists in a roundabout sense. So I've attacked his one, I've attacked his two. He hasn't attacked any on mine, so I'm going to throw it back to him.
All right. So first off, I'm going to tackle the theory of the conservation of energy. Now, I don't think that there is any doubt that there is still potential energy left inside a corpse. Bodies break down, decomposers feast upon our flesh. Our state of matter changes. Now, to say that this is life per se, or is the same sort of life that existed before, I believe is taking the definition of the word to a point of vagueness. So, yes, some form of energy exists, but it's in the same way that the form of energy exists that there are worms nibbling on our toes, right? That is my main argument with his second contention. So internal knowledge carries on. But to me, if we take that claim at face value, that actually will preclude many life forms, specifically human life forms. So, for example, a baby who dies immediately after birth really has bestowed very little knowledge upon the world. To me, that child would fall short of this contention. So it passed out no knowledge to the world. So therefore, this small child that existed only for a brief moment might not have life after death, whereas I guess Hamilton would. By the way, I like the Hamilton reference. Great musical. So, all right. So the legally pronounced dead study that he cited in the beginning, and I think that gets back to our definitions of the word. It's a widely accepted fact that the brain dies over time, and parts of the brain die, or parts of the body die before the brain. The body will actually kind of focus its resources into preserving any part of the brain that can. So when a person dies in the legal sense, as in their heart stops beating, they haven't completely died in the metaphysical sense. That is the Merriam-Webster definition of the word, because there has not been complete cessation of the naturalistic processes, the brain cells themselves. And I'm going to pass the mic back to Andrew.
I'm going to ask a quick question for you and pass it back to you. Just on a bright line on that contention, how long is needed for it to be able to actually say that cessation happens?
Well, I think that would depend entirely upon the process of death. So, for example, a gunshot wound to the head, a person would probably die very, very quickly. Whereas something like cancer or pneumonia or something like that, it would probably take longer.
Okay, so let's go through these argumentations in his refutation. First, I'm going to start on the paranormal argumentation on the energy situation. One, I want to continue to say that he himself uses the word some form. That's going to be very important in this argumentation. One on this is he uses some form of that it does exist, some form it does carry on. Two, let's look back to the resolution. The resolution says some form of life, some form of consciousness. In the point where he agrees that some form does live on no matter what, he is agreeing with the resolution and affirming the resolution today. He says some form. That's all I have to prove, that there must be some form of life or some form of consciousness. That is what the resolution asks me for. Him agreeing with that in that contention should garner an affirmative win. Two, he completely drops the paranormal evidence that this some form of energy can leave on through that. Don't let him continue to bring that up when we get late into this debate. He's had 3 speeches to do it, and he hasn't done it yet. I gave a specific study of 2 people that have shown over 5,000 cases of this existing, so we can prove that to be true, and my third contention stands. On to the second contention. about the internal knowledge. His main argumentation here is the specific instance of a baby. One, go back to the some form. I don't have to prove that it happens in all cases. I have to prove that some form does exist at times. Two, when we look to the baby, we can say that this still does go on. We can say that the baby and the mom and the impact that they had, the dad and what he had, the memories that were happening as she was carrying that child. Once it was born, I know mothers that have specifically wanted other babies. They have not wanted other babies because of this. They have had an impact on that child's death that has affected their life completely moving forward, whether it's a hole that needed to be filled, the need for motherhood. So that consciousness still does exist, and that internal knowledge that she had and those emotions that baby gave to that family do continue to exist. Then we go on to my first contention, where basically he says that the brain hasn't officially stopped when that happens. We say vital organs. Vital organs, the heart and the lungs are what feed the brain. So we can't say that that's not true. Two, there's no bright line against this study that says that this wasn't happening in this. We specifically see over 2,060 people at the point that they were brought to death that their consciousness lived on for 3 to 10 minutes. I asked for a time frame to say it. He can't tell me and give me the burden of proof that after 3, 5, 7, 9, or 10 minutes that this life has officially ceased. He can't give me that bright line. Therefore, the evidence in the study of the consciousness existing will stand. Look to the fact that I've talked about his two contentions with no refutation, and we're going to see how his negative case falls. He agrees with my third contention, and I have successfully proven that some form of life or consciousness will exist.
All right, so Andrew, you're really good at talking really fast. I'm not so great at that. So I would respectfully like to go back and hit on the paranormal evidence that you presented. I know I've like dropped it. I dropped that point because I haven't addressed it. But like I said, you're really good at talking fast. I'm not so good at it, so I'm going to revisit it. So my question with the paranormal study is where was this study published? Did it pass a peer review process? Has it been verified by anyone else? What were the specific claims made? Paranormal is really fun to talk about, and it makes for really great shows on the Sci-Fi Channel, crossing over with John Edwards. But did this study stand up to the scrutiny of a rigorous academic process? Are the claims made in the study repeatable by anyone else other than the two authors of the study? And was it published? And if it was not, it published in a reputable academic source. And if it was not, I'm curious as to why. Now, I wanted to, I'm just going to pass the mic back to you after that.
Okay, so to answer your questions, one, these two people do have a sci-fi TV show that's called Ghost Hunters. So yes, that does exist in that. Two, I've shown the evidence that they have shown in over 5,000 specific cases through the TV show, through other YouTube videos, through their own accounts and their records. And I gave you the 12 different methods that they've used to prove this. So I believe that now it is your responsibility to debunk that. Like, they have shown video footage, they have shown different things. So that's what I'm presenting as evidence. Therefore, it's you to do it. So I don't see, unless you have an academic record debunking the paranormal activity or something like that, I'll present it. But this is the evidence and stuff that I'm presenting. So I'm going to pass it back to you to prove that false.
Sure. So I'm quick Googling one of my favorite debunkers of the paranormal. But in lieu of that, we can go back over some of the other stuff here, and specifically the first study about consciousness existing after death. And again, I want to hit home the distinction between what is considered dead in the medical sense of the word and what is considered dead in the metaphysical sense of the word. So the complete cessation of vital organs, yes, the heart, the lungs, the circulatory system are part of the vital organs. The most vital of the vital organs is the brain. Now, in all those cases that were studied of people being pronounced legally dead, has there been verification that the brain was actually dead, as in no brain cells were undergoing any kind of metabolic activity? And with that, I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay, so specifically on this argumentation, I'm going to say one, he says that the brain is functional and needing to happen. One, that's not true. There's many cases of the brain not working and people still living in vegetative states and different aspects of that. So when we look at this specific example, we see that the heart, the lungs, the body can operate without the brain, and the body can still be in an alive state, but we can see that the brain can't without those things. So it's not as vital, it's not needed, it's not there. This study specifically shows how 3 to 10 minutes of life happened afterward, or consciousness happened after life had ceased. He can't prove that the brain wasn't existing in those situations, but I have specifically shown how the brain can't exist without the body, but the body can exist without the brain. Therefore, we don't see it as a vital function in his definition of terms. So I do believe the case study still stands. If not, you're going to look at the fact that my refutation on his case has gone untouched, and you're going to look to my second and third contention, which still stand in my favor.
All right, so I'm going to go back and hammer home my contention too. So, the ultimate death of the universe. Given the Big Bang Theory is a fact, just making that assumption, the universe has a start, and the universe we can logically deduce has an end. Especially giving Law 1 and Law 2 of the thermodynamics and the fact that the universe is a closed system. So, life in the absolute sense seems to be skyrocketing towards an abrupt conclusion that ends in a cold. I don't know what happened. Are you there? I think Andrew might be having some technical problems. Hold on.